Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into today's story, please make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on so you don't miss what's next. Clara had always believed in the architecture of her life. She had built it with the same precision and care she applied to the blueprints that covered her desk, each line a promise, each measurement a fact. At 38, a successful architect in the heart of Chicago, she thought she had it all. A career she was passionate about, a city that pulsed with energy, and a 12-year marriage to Maya that was the foundation of her entire world. It was a structure she considered unshakable, built on trust and shared history, solid as granite. Until that Tuesday afternoon in late October, the one with the bruised purple sky and the wind that tore at the lake, when she learned that the foundation was sand and the entire edifice was a lie. Her best friend, Sarah, called her, her voice strained and thin, and with a few devastating sentences, brought the whole thing crashing down. For 12 years, life with Maya had been a comfortable, beautiful rhythm. They had met in their mid-20s, Clara just starting out at her firm, Maya finishing her dissertation in comparative literature. Their courtship felt like a classic film montage, late-night talks in cozy diners, long walks along the lakefront, the easy slide from separate apartments into a shared life. They bought a condo in Lincoln Park with soaring windows that drank in the morning light, filling it with books and art and the warm scent of coffee that Maya brewed every single morning. Clara saw their life as a completed project, a masterpiece of domestic engineering. She had always thought of Maya as the soul of their home, the one who brought the color and poetry while Clara provided the structure and strength. Maya, a tenured professor at the university, was brilliant and effusive, her hands always moving when she talked about Foucault or Woolf, her passion a bright, captivating flame. Clara, more reserved and methodical, found a deep sense of peace in Maya's vibrant energy. She believed they complemented each other perfectly, two halves of a meticulously designed whole. She had believed their love was a fact, as tangible and real as the steel beams holding up the skyscrapers she designed. She had thought she knew her wife. The first crack in the foundation was almost imperceptible. It began about 6 months before the collapse, a subtle shift in their shared rhythm. Maya started staying late at the university, her texts full of apologies about a new, demanding research project. "Just swamped, my love. Don't wait up," became a familiar refrain. At first, Clara was nothing but supportive, bringing Maya dinner at her office, rubbing her shoulders as she hunched over stacks of books. But then other, smaller things began to accumulate, like hairline fractures spreading from a single point of stress. Maya's phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, was now always in her pocket or face down on the nightstand. When Clara once picked it up to check the time, Maya flinched, a sharp, involuntary movement that felt entirely alien. "I'm just waiting for an important email from the department head," she'd explained, her voice a little too quick, a little too high. She started mentioning a new colleague, a junior faculty member named Zoe, with increasing frequency. "Zoe has this brilliant take on post-structuralism," or "Zoe recommended the most amazing podcast." The name, Zoe, became a recurring motif in their conversations, a bright, intrusive color in their carefully curated palette. Clara, a woman who trusted in data and evidence, tried to rationalize it all away. Maya was under pressure. A new academic star had arrived in her department. Of course she was energized and a little distracted. It was a phase. All long-term relationships had them. She told herself she was being paranoid, that her own recent work stress was making her see shadows where there were none. She loved Maya, and love meant trust. So she trusted, even as a cold knot of unease began to form in the pit of her stomach. She ignored the way Maya's eyes would sometimes seem to look straight through her, as if focusing on a point in the far distance that Clara couldn't see. The call from Sarah came while Clara was at her office, reviewing the HVAC plans for a new museum wing. Sarah, her friend since college, was a pragmatist, an administrator in the same university department as Maya. She was not given to drama. "Clara, can you talk?" Sarah's voice was tight, stripped of its usual warmth. Clara stepped into an empty conference room, a sense of dread washing over her. What's wrong? Sarah took a deep, shaky breath. I'm so sorry. I've been wrestling with this for weeks and I can't not tell you, she began, her words tumbling out in a rush. It's Maya. And Zoe. I've seen them, Clara. Not just working. I saw them last week at that little Italian place in River North, the one with the dark booths. They were holding hands across the table. And today I saw them in the parking garage. He was leaving, and she kissed her. It wasn't a friendly kiss, each word was a physical blow. The air rushed out of Clara's lungs. The blueprints on the table blurred, the precise black lines dissolving into a meaningless gray smudge. The room seemed to tilt, the floor dropping away beneath her feet. She gripped the edge of the heavy mahogany table to keep from falling. Are you sure? She whispered, the question a pathetic plea. Clara, I'm so sorry, Sarah said again, her voice thick with pity. I saw her face. I saw Maya's face. There's no mistake, the call ended. Clara stood in the silent conference room for a long time, her knuckles white on the table's edge. The world outside the window, the traffic, the people, the city she had helped to build, all seemed to fade to a dull, soundless hum. A wave of nausea so profound it buckled her knees washed over her. She stumbled to the attached private restroom and was violently sick. When it was over, she splashed cold water on her face, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a horror she had only ever seen in movies. The architect in her, the part that lived for logic and order, was gone. In its place was a raw, gaping void. But then, after the shock receded, something else rose to take its place. It was a feeling as cold and hard as steel, fury. A quiet, methodical rage. She would not scream. She would not cry. She would gather evidence. She would build a case. That night, she went home and played her part. She asked Maya about her day, listened to a story about a frustrating faculty meeting, and pretended to believe her when she said she was exhausted. When Maya fell asleep, her breathing deep and even, Clara slipped out of bed. The first piece of evidence came from their shared iPad, an old device Maya never used, which was still synced to her iCloud account. There they were. Text messages stretching back for 8 months. A complete, unvarnished history of the affair. She began to read, her heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm against her ribs. The messages started innocently enough, discussions of literature, shared articles. But they quickly morphed into something else entirely. Flirtation, then declarations of love, then explicit plans for their secret meetings. Clara saw hotel reservations for places in their own city, booked on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Can't wait to be in our little bubble again, Zoe had written. Counting the minutes, Maya had replied. Worse than the logistics were the things they said about her. Clara is just so predictable, Maya had texted one night. A night Clara now remembered she had made Maya's favorite dinner because she seemed so stressed. She's a wonderful person, but it's like living in a beautifully designed museum. I need to live, Zoe. You make me feel alive. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a character assassination delivered in casual, pithy texts. Clara felt the cold fury solidify into something unbreakable. She took screenshots of everything, hundreds of them, her fingers moving with a detached, robotic precision. She airdropped them to her own laptop and created a password-protected folder. Next, she logged into their shared cloud photo account. Maya, in her arrogance, must have forgotten that her phone's camera roll automatically synced. There was a folder, innocently labeled Research, that was filled with photos of Maya and Zoe. Pictures of them at dinner, their heads close together. A selfie in a park, their faces flushed and happy. A picture of Zoe, asleep in a bed that Clara recognized with a jolt as belonging to a boutique hotel near the university. The final piece was the credit card statements. Clara logged into their joint account, and there it was, a trail of evidence. Charges for hotel rooms on weekday afternoons. Expensive dinners at restaurants Maya had claimed to be too tired to go to with Clara. A charge from a jewelry store in a neighboring suburb for a delicate gold bracelet Clara had seen on Zoe's wrist in one of the photos. The sheer volume of the deception was staggering. It wasn't a fleeting mistake. It was a calculated, long-term campaign of deceit. By the time the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the living room, Clara had everything. A complete, irrefutable dossier of her wife's secret life. She printed it all, the texts, the photos, the receipts, and laid the pages out on their glass coffee table like a final, damning architectural plan. Then she made coffee and waited. Maya came out of the bedroom around 8, yawning and stretching, a picture of domestic innocence. "Morning, love," she said cheerfully, heading for the kitchen. "I made coffee," Clara said, her voice flat and even. Maya stopped, sensing the chill in the air. Her eyes traveled from Clara's rigid posture on the sofa to the sea of white paper covering the coffee table. The color drained from her face. She took a tentative step closer, her gaze fixed on a printed photo of her and Zoe kissing. The cheerful mask fell away, replaced by pure, panicked shock. "Clara, what is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "This," Clara said, her tone as cold and sharp as broken glass, "is the last 8 months of your life." "The part you thought I wouldn't see." Maya sank onto the edge of an armchair, her hands trembling. The practiced academic composure dissolved into raw fear. "It's not what you think," she stammered, the most pathetic and predictable of all clichés. "Oh, I think it is," Clara replied, her voice dangerously calm. "I think it's hotel rooms on Tuesdays. I think it's you telling Zoe that I'm predictable and that living with me is like being in a museum. I think it's you buying her a bracelet with our money. Am I getting it right?" Maya stared at her, her mouth opening and closing silently, like a fish gasping for air. Then came the second stage of the script, minimization. "It didn't mean anything, Clara. It was just a distraction. My work has been so stressful and you've been so busy. It was foolish, it was a mistake, but it meant nothing." Clara let out a short, bitter laugh. "Nothing? You discussed your future together. You talked about getting a dog and moving to the coast. These texts don't sound like nothing, Maya. They sound like a plan." The evidence, laid out so clinically, left no room for argument. Maya's defense crumbled, and she shifted to blame. "I've been so unhappy," she cried, her voice rising. "I've felt trapped. You're always so contained, so logical. I needed passion, I needed to feel something. You drove me to this." Clara stood up, looking down at the woman she had loved for 12 years. Contempt, cold and pure, washed away the last vestiges of her grief. "I drove you to it? I built a life for us, Maya. A beautiful, stable life. I supported your career, I celebrated your successes, I took care of you when you were sick. And while I was doing that, you were telling another woman that I was stifling you. Do not lay this at my feet. This is yours." All of it. The final, desperate phase began. The therapy speak. "I was just trying to find myself," Maya sobbed, tears now streaming down her face. "I needed to explore my own identity outside of our relationship." Clara picked up a printed page of text messages. "Is that what you call this? Exploring your identity? Or is it just cheating, plain and simple? You used our life, our home, and our money to finance your little journey of self-discovery. And you did it while lying to my face every single day." She let the paper drift from her fingers back onto the table. "I have one more thing to say," Clara said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, but each word was delivered with surgical precision. "The marriage is over. We are done." Maya's head snapped up, her eyes wide with genuine terror. The reality of the situation finally seemed to penetrate her bubble of self-justification. "No, no, Clara, you can't mean that," she pleaded, scrambling toward her. "We can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll do anything. I love you." Clara took a step back, holding up a hand to stop her. "You don't love me, Maya. You love the safety I provide. You love this home. You love the idea of me. The person you love, you destroyed with every one of these lies. Now, I want you to pack a bag. I want you out of this house today." Maya completely fell apart, collapsing into desperate, racking sobs, begging and promising, but Clara was immovable. The architect had seen the flawed foundation, and her only instinct was to demolish the structure before it killed her. She walked into their bedroom, took a suitcase from the closet, and placed it on the bed. Then she walked out, leaving Maya weeping amidst the ruins of their life. The morning after the confrontation, Clara moved with the efficiency of a demolition crew. Her first call was to Eleanor Vance, the most notoriously relentless divorce attorney in Chicago. In Eleanor's sleek downtown office, Clara laid out the binder she had compiled. The printed texts, the itemized credit card statements, the time-stamped photos. Eleanor, a woman who had seen every flavor of marital treachery, raised an appreciative eyebrow. "Well, Miss Hayes," she said, a thin smile on her lips, "you've made my job very easy. Your wife has been monumentally stupid." The second call was to the Human Resources Department at the university. Clara calmly and factually reported an inappropriate relationship between a tenured professor, Dr. Maya Sterling, and a junior faculty member under her mentorship, Zoe Miller. She mentioned she had extensive documentation. The HR representative's tone shifted from bureaucratic to alarmed. An official investigation was launched immediately. The consequences for Maya and Zoe were swift and brutal. Zoe, being non-tenured and in a subordinate position, was suspended pending the investigation, her academic career effectively incinerated. The news of the affair, confirmed by the university's formal inquiry, spread like wildfire through their tight-knit academic and social circles. The reaction was almost universally damning. Friends who had been to their home for dinner parties, who had celebrated anniversaries with them, were horrified. Clara's phone filled with messages of support, while Maya's went silent. Even Maya's own parents called Clara, their voices choked with shame, to apologize for their daughter's behavior. Maya, stripped of her home and her social standing, attempted a desperate campaign of reconciliation. She sent a barrage of texts, alternating between abject apologies and furious accusations. Voicemails arrived, filled with weeping and begging. Clara blocked her number. One evening, Maya showed up at the condo, hammering on the door. Clara had already had the locks changed. She watched her on the security camera feed, a pathetic, rain-soaked figure, before calling building security to have her removed. The fantasy Maya had built with Zoe shattered just as quickly. Faced with professional ruin and public disgrace, Zoe wanted nothing to do with the woman who had caused it. She packed her bags, broke her lease, and left Chicago without so much as a goodbye to Maya. The grand, passionate love that was supposed to make Maya feel alive had evaporated the moment it was exposed to the harsh light of reality. Maya was left utterly and completely alone, a pariah in the world she had worked so hard to conquer. The divorce was finalized in under 6 months. Armed with Clara's irrefutable evidence of infidelity and the misuse of marital assets, Eleanor Vance eviscerated Maya's legal team. The settlement was overwhelmingly in Clara's favor. She was awarded the condo outright and a significantly larger share of their investments to compensate for the money Maya had squandered on the affair. The court, in essence, validated what Clara already knew: Maya's betrayal had a clear and quantifiable cost. 18 months later, Chicago was entering another autumn. The wind coming off the lake was crisp and clean. Clara sat on the balcony of her new home, a stunning loft in the West Loop with an unobstructed view of the skyline she knew so well. She had sold the Lincoln Park condo, unable to stomach the memories embedded in its walls, and had used the proceeds to start fresh. Her career had flourished. The museum wing she had been working on when her life fell apart had opened to critical acclaim and won a prestigious architectural award. The pain of Maya's betrayal had not vanished, but it had changed. It was no longer a gaping wound, but a scarred-over place, a reminder of her own resilience. She had spent a year in therapy, learning to rebuild her trust in her own judgment. She had reconnected with old friends and hobbies she had let slide, filling her new life with things that were wholly hers. One afternoon, she received an email from Sarah. It was a brief, almost reluctant update. Sarah had heard through the academic grapevine that Maya, having been forced to resign her tenured position in disgrace, had moved to a small town in Indiana. She was teaching freshman composition as an adjunct at a local community college, living in a small apartment complex by the highway. The image was so bleak, so diminished from the vibrant, celebrated professor Maya had been, that Clara felt a surprising pang, not of pity, but of a kind of distant, clinical sadness for the waste of it all. Maya had thrown away everything for a fantasy and was now living in its drab, lonely aftermath. A few weeks after that email, Clara was at a gallery opening when a woman with warm, intelligent eyes struck up a conversation with her about the use of negative space in the exhibit. Her name was Emily, a curator at the Art Institute. They talked for over an hour, and when Emily asked for her number, Clara gave it to her without hesitation. Their first date was a walk through Millennium Park, and it was nothing like her time with Maya. It was slow, cautious, and honest. There was no grand, performative passion, but a quiet, steady current of mutual respect. As she sat on her balcony, sketching a new idea in her notebook, her phone buzzed with a text from Emily. A smile touched Clara's lips, genuine and unforced. She looked out at the city, at the buildings of steel and glass that reached for the sky. She had survived the demolition. She had cleared the rubble. And now, on a new and solid foundation, she was beginning to build again. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell to make sure you're the first to know when we post new content. We'll see you in the next one.